In this episode of Revolution Report, we're going to be discussing various ways the First Amendment is under attack, from the FBI activity to potential media censorship.
And before we get started, we wanted to let you all know that on our website, handballcourtradio.com, we now have a way to donate to the station. We fund this station with our own money, and if you appreciate our content and the work we do, we'd really appreciate any donations to help us cover our operating costs.
Now, let's get into the episode.
Let's do it.
To get us started, because this episode is all about the ways the Trump administration is attacking the First Amendment, we wanted to start with a review of what the First Amendment actually is.
It's more than just freedom of spoken speech. It protects multiple forms of speech. The amendment reads, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances.
What this means is that under the First Amendment, the people's freedom of religion, freedom of speech, including freedom of the press, and the right to peacefully protest, including via assembly or asking the government to change, are all protected from government restriction. It's important to note that these amendments protect the people from the government's actions, not the action of private companies or corporations. That's why people can get kicked off of social media platforms for saying certain things. Being on a social media app isn't a right, I note a contrary belief, and the platform can decide to restrict speech however they desire. But what shouldn't happen is the government arresting you for expressing a belief online.
Now, let's dive into the ways the Trump administration has been trying to destroy American citizens' First Amendment rights. We'll start with an absolutely egregious attack on freedom of speech that was snuck into Trump's FBI's budget request to Congress for the fiscal year 2027. We're going to read the whole passage and then break it down for you.
This portion of the FBI budget request states, for more than a century, the FBI has occupied a critical role in protecting the United States from threats to the nation's public safety, borders, economy, and way of life. Domestic terrorists who are motivated by a range of ideologies and galvanized by recent political and societal events in the United States pose an elevated threat to the homeland.
Domestic terrorists exploit a variety of popular social media platforms, smaller websites with targeted audiences, and encrypted chat applications. They use these platforms to recruit new adherents, plan and rally support for in-person actions, and disseminate materials encouraging radicalization and mobilization to violence.
DT loan offenders will continue to pose significant detection and disruption challenges because of their capacity for independent radicalization to violence, ability to mobilize discreetly, and access to firearms. Additionally, in recent years, heinous assassinations and other acts of political violence in the United States have dramatically increased. Commonly, this violent conduct relates to views associated with anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, and anti-Christianity, supports for the overthrow of the U.S. government, extremism on migration, race, and gender, and hostility towards those who hold traditional American views on family, religion, and morality. I'm annoyed if you couldn't tell.
Validly so. Continuing, in September 2025, President Trump signed National Security Presidential Memorandum 7, directing the FBI and JTTFs to coordinate a comprehensive national strategy to investigate, prosecute, and disrupt entities and individuals engaged in acts of political violence and intimidation designed to suppress lawful political activity or obstruct the rule of law. As a result, the FBI oversees the recently created NSPM 7 Joint Mission Center. The JMC is composed of personnel from 10 agencies who possess CT and criminal operational and analytical expertise. The JMC is working to counter DT and organized political violence by integrating intelligence, operational support, and financial analysis to proactively identify networks and prosecute domestic terrorist and related criminal actors.
Now, We do know that was a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were paying attention, you might have caught that the FBI, a part of the federal government, has a center dedicated to monitoring the online activity of Americans and categorizing them as potential domestic terrorists for expressing certain beliefs. And those beliefs include support for trans rights, being anti homophobic, anti capitalism, support for immigration's rights, and effectively whatever the Trump administration wants to target people for.
Insanity. Under Kash Patel, the FBI has become the Trump administration's way to police the speech of the American people. The beliefs deemed as signs of potential domestic terrorism are ridiculous and reminiscent of McCarthyism. To think that you could be monitored by the FBI and deemed a potential terrorist for saying you don't like capitalism online, or that you support trans people, is such a blatant way to restrict the speech and ideas of the American people.
Absolutely. By doing this, the federal government is deeming certain kinds of speech as harmful and a threat to the country, when largely the ideas they identify are actually about supporting minorities and freeing people from oppressive structures.
This FBI activity should be a huge sign to people that the Trump administration doesn't care about the rights of their opposition. It's paving the way for Americans to be imprisoned for speaking out against the administration online. To be clear, we're not there just yet, but this FBI activity is laying the groundwork for that to happen.
And that is deeply concerning. Also, what's concerning is the way the freedom of the press is being restricted by the Trump administration. Hegseth has tried to remove and restrict press access to the Pentagon, which is an ongoing legal battle. But we wanted to focus on a different way freedom of the press is under threat.
You may remember our recent episode on the Ellison family and their attempt to form a media monopoly with the pending Paramount Warner Brothers Discovery merger. If you haven't heard that episode yet, definitely check it out. The Ellisons, who already own CBS and could soon own CNN, have been cozying up to Trump recently.
Interesting. On April 23rd of this year, David Ellison threw a party to honor Trump, which obviously Trump attended. The editor-in-chief of CBS News, Barry Weiss, actually sat at the same table as Trump. You might be wondering what this dinner and the Ellisons' relationship with Trump has to do with the freedom of press. Now, we'll explain.
Trump has filed many lawsuits against news organizations, including one against CBS News, over a 60 Minutes piece he didn't like. He has been very publicly outspoken against 60 Minutes and CBS, and during that time, Barry Weiss shelved an investigative 60 Minutes piece on the Venezuelan men Trump's administration had deported to a torturous prison in El Salvador.
Yeah. Now, for legal reasons, we're not alleging that Trump is the reason that the piece was shelved. Weiss has come out and said it's because she felt the piece wasn't ready and needed comments from the Trump administration. We're just pointing out the timing and noting that Weiss was at the same table as Trump during this dinner.
The Ellisons are, of course, cozying up to Trump in part to get his support for the merger. But it should be concerning to anyone interested in a free press when the owners of a massive media company make nice with the president, especially one as fascistic as Trump. Questions emerge like, how will trying to get on Trump's good side affect the stories that are allowed to be covered? Will certain topics not get the coverage they deserve because the people who own the company are actively trying to flatter Trump?
Trump is notorious for filing lawsuits over news stories he just doesn't like, which is an obvious threat to freedom of press. The president, the leader of the executive branch of the federal government, trying to restrict what is discussed in the news is a textbook violation of the First Amendment. Will the Ellisons or Weiss, under direction of the Ellisons, take any action to avoid another lawsuit while they're trying to get the merger approved? How much censorship will occur? When oligarchs and authoritarians get together, you've got to ask yourself what the effects might be for freedom of press in this country.
As for the right to peacefully protest, we've already discussed at length how ICE, a part of the federal government, has been attacking, arresting, and even killing protesters. Renee Good and Alex Preddy were initially labeled as domestic terrorists by the Trump administration as a way to justify their murders, until public pressure forced them to take back those statements.
Which brings us to what we can do about these attacks on the First Amendment. First, as always, use your voice. Spread awareness of what's going on and contact your representatives. Let them know you value your First Amendment rights. Tell them that you don't want the FBI monitoring normal online activity and treating millions of Americans as potential terrorist threats because of their perfectly reasonable beliefs. And let them know that you oppose the Paramount Warner Brothers Discovery merger, and as your representative, they should too.
Facts. We'll include a link on our website, handballcourtradio.com, to help you identify your representative. Second, know your rights. We'll include a link on our website to a thorough explanation of the First Amendment and what is protected. We'll also include a link to the ACLU and the National Lawyers Guild in case your First Amendment rights have been violated.
And finally, we'll include a link to the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers' collection of resources for guides on how to exercise your right to protest safely in today's age of digital surveillance.
The most important thing to remember is that we can make change happen. As we mentioned earlier, the Trump administration had to walk back their statements on Renee Good and Alex Preddy as a result of public pressure. Using your voice and exercising your First Amendment rights is a powerful tool. And the reason the Trump administration is targeting the First Amendment is because of how powerful the people's voice really is.
So, please, don't roll over and accept these attacks on our rights. You've got to use your rights, or you might lose them.
That's about it for this episode. We hope it was informative.
As always, you can check out our website, handballcourtradio.com. There, if you appreciate the work we do, you can donate to help us cover our operating costs. Also, you can follow us on Blue Sky at Handball Court Radio, and you can also follow me there at Sarah Livings-Walsh.
I'm there as Not Like Mona Lisa. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, don't forget to rate, review, and follow us. And if you're watching on YouTube, we'd love it if you like, subscribe, and share so you don't miss our content.
And with that, I'm Sarah Livings-Walsh.
I'm Analisa Venolia.
And this has been Revolution Report.